Market Blast with myself and the amazing Angie. Just wait for her to turn up. Here she is. She is rapid. Invite. Let's drop that over to you. Hopefully that's been sent. Oh, let me just double check. Did that send? Invite co-host. Try again. Let's see if that's worked. Fingers crossed. Have you got an invite?
I did. I'm here.
Yes.
And I always like it when you're like, you make me co-host, because like in my brain I think, look at me, I am the captain now. So
you are always the captain. I'm the cabin boy, just cleaning up after everyone. Once let's get the legals out the way before I get myself into trouble. Nothing discussed on this Spaces session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PRQ Global Limited, Trainers PRQ or PRQ Suite, or indeed the hosts, which, as you know by now, is the amazing Angie, way, myself, Ryan, way.
Even better, yeah. That's it.
So what's been going on in agricultural markets, my darling?
Oh man. Welcome to USDA Report Eve. For those of you in the industry that are involved farmer wise, market wise, anyone that is, people rely on you for information. Maybe this is too specific, but welcome to the next 24 hours of impending dread. Because you're always really nervous about USDA. Like the USDA numbers tomorrow are going to be quarterly stocks, final production updates. There's a whole host. This is probably one of the bigger, I would say there's probably 3, maybe 4 reports that you have that are relatively huge. And this is one of them simply because it will give us the final production number, air quotes, because they'll still make adjustments for the next 5 years on these things to try to get perfect, is what they'll tell you. But this will be called the final production number. And so this will really kind of lay the lay of the land, if you will, or give us an idea of what to expect here going forward. And it'll be pretty huge because we've been really stuck here in a range. In corn, we've worked our way up to 6-month highs, right? But really haven't been able to push much above that. There's been a lot of folks that have said, hey, we're making lower highs. This is concerning. We're probably going to fall off. But from a fundamental standpoint, on the corn market, it's hard to really argue that tomorrow will bring with it a super bearish surprise, which brings in this whole feeling of impending dread. Like, what am I missing? There has to be something, right? But this is what we're looking at today. Traders are expecting a bit of a trim overall to ending stocks across the U.S. for corn, soybeans, and wheat. They're anticipating a bit of a smaller production figure. If you look at what the cash markets have been doing, you saw the Jan March bean board invert or bean spread invert at one point, which is kind of an interesting sign in a market that's supposed to have what is close to burdensome supplies. And if you look at the July December corn spread, it is heavily inverted. Like, it is trading a 1.3 billion bushel carryout is what a lot of folks would argue, versus a 1.7 like the USDA is currently forecasting. And so it'll be interesting to see what tomorrow brings. And as a result, today is kind of going to be a bit of a, just a rearranging sort of day. It'll be pretty quiet, I feel like, over the next couple of days, outside of, your headline risk and some of these other things. Yeah. So that's point one. Any questions?
Point 1, done.
Point 1, check it off, move on to the next thing. Obviously, it's South America, South American weather, South American production, South American everything. Yesterday, the Buenos Aires Grain Exchange came out and said, hey, dudes, no worries. Next week, the end of the 7-day forecast through the following week, we're looking at 2 to 3 inches of rain. It's going to stabilize everything. And yeah, we're cool. And so you saw a little bit of a sell-off in the market. And now folks are kind of like, okay, can you show me the model that's giving us this 2 to 3 inches of rain? And they're like, it's a secret. It's a, so there is rain. Like, do not get me wrong. There's rain building into the forecast for a good portion of Argentina. Once we get past day 7, the big question is this a long-term change in trend for Argentina? Like, do you see a bit? Because if they do, you have had a bit of a drier December and a bit of a dry stretch here with a little bit of heat and some concern. And we've obviously capped, some of the higher end of production expectations. Now the question is, do we trim production, or do we just kind of maintain this level that's in line with what last year was? Or, what does it look like? As we move our way to the north from Argentina, you're getting into to southern Brazil, there are some areas of Rio Grande do Sul, eastern Paraguay, and places around there that are concerning and are probably looking at some trims to production. And one of the things that I think is kind of interesting now, or is important to kind of take into consideration, is we have whisper numbers in ag too. Numbers where people are like, hey, coming up, this is probably what we're looking at, or when we get to the end of the season, this is probably what we're looking at. And so 2 weeks ago, ahead of Christmas, the whisper number for Brazil's production was creeping up towards 180 million metric tons. That's versus the USDA's current forecast of 169. 11 million metric tons is 400 million bushels of increased supply availability was what the market was trading or thinking was coming. This in addition to already increasing production 700 and some odd million from last year. And so that was really considered burdensome. Now we're probably looking at more of a likelihood of, 2 to 3 million metric ton increase in Brazil, maybe bumping it up to a 172, something like that. But one of the things I want to throw out there, and we talked about that this morning in this morning's commentary, and AgriInvest, our Brazilian, our cash brokerage firms, analytical group out of Brazil. My Brazilian friends is what I will call them because they are a great resource. They're saying, hey, wait a minute, you guys are forgetting there is a lot of domestic demand increases that we're seeing in Brazil, thanks to the fuels of the future bill, thanks to good crush margins, thanks to good feed margins, things like that. And so one of the things I want to caution everyone is we're really, really focusing on these production numbers out of Brazil, especially for soybeans. But we're probably underestimating, at least when you look at the USDA numbers versus some of these private numbers that we're seeing, we're probably underestimating crush demand, by 3 to 5 million metric tons potentially, and probably underestimating, domestic corn demand in Brazil as well. And so those will be things that we'll wait to see tomorrow in tomorrow's report, is if the USDA is going to make any of these global reductions that are super importante, and will also have a big influence, that's important for those of you who don't habla Espanol. But it's one of those things that we're just going to be watching, because it's not just supply. And a lot of times we get so hell bent on focusing on supply in a lot of ways, because between about 14 and 19, all we heard about was this plateauing demand, right? That's all you heard. We're not growing demand around the world. We're not blah, blah, blah. We are. And I still haven't quite grasped how we quantify the growth and demand that we're seeing for agricultural commodities when it comes to biofuels. But it is one of those things that is basically a continuation of growth that we're seeing, and how the USDA rectifies this and what that means for, this offsetting of some of this growth and supply that we keep hearing about, will be interesting to see tomorrow and in subsequent reports.
That kind of also ties in with what you said yesterday, right? It's like all eyes on to find out what China are doing on that front as well.
Yes.
Because we see a hell of a lot of demand just kind of come out basically on one headline.
Yes. What China does, what China doesn't do is going to be huge. And we will get a Chinese supply and demand update tomorrow as well. And that could be interesting to see, what do they do there? China is really actively trying to fight a deflationary cycle, obviously. And they're really struggling with cheap corn prices and wheat prices and things like that. And a lot of folks will be like, okay, what's wrong with cheap food? But it's deflationary or whatever. And so we are kind of watching to see what's happening there. But we have seen some interesting upticks in soybean meal demand domestically in China here recently. But I think that might be driven more because there's some pockets of soybean shortages. I use air quotes simply because the beans are there. They're just hard to get access to, where there's been some rule changes, some paperwork things, some delays and deliveries, blah, blah, blah. And so that's created some air pockets and increased nearby soybean meal demand. But we also have in 3 weeks the Lunar New Year holiday. And so if you're bored now, if you think Chinese demand is boring and there isn't really much in the way of excitement, wait until they're completely gone for a week, 10 days, whatever. And then it'll be slow. And but yeah, so for the most part, point one, obviously, the USDA report tomorrow and kind of getting us in line for that. Point two is what the heck's going on in South America. Weather models will be big. We're going to be watching to see if you have to watch to see if it rolls forward. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times you'll get 8 to 14 day forecasts that'll show more in the way of rain. But as the day 8 becomes day 6 or day 5 or day 4, your amounts may shift. And so that'll be huge. That'll be something to watch. And then the rest of the day is really just going to be headline driven. What is China doing? What does Trump say? Do we get any further clarity on, the trade conversation from yesterday from CNN, and whether or not we'll see, which direction are we going? Because both of those stories are pretty on pretty opposite ends of the spectrum. And so giddy up. We're not going to be short of information to talk about here over the next few days. That's for darn sure.
Which is why everyone's got to tune in every day and listen to you, expel all of your insights.
Talk 10 minutes straight. Thank God we don't charge by the word, right? You're good to go.
Yeah, right. Well, Angie, thank you so much for that. Everyone, all listeners, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope we've added some value to your day, maybe put a smile on your face, who knows. And we will tune in tomorrow, and we will catch you then.
Yeah, we'll be ready to rock. Have a good one.
Angie, bye-bye.
Thanks.